Hi, this week we're looking at two short stories. We're winding down in our course. We've looked at a number of poems and stories and essays and a novel, and this is it. You're just about at the home plate here in the course. The two stories that we're looking at today are both widely anthologized stories, which means that they're often found in short story collections. In particular, the Flannery O'Connor short story, A Good Man is Hard to Find. Okay, this is a well-loved story, and you may have read that story and thought, why do people love this story? It's so disturbing, it's awful, and it certainly is a morbid story. We have an entire family getting murdered at the end of it. I'm sorry for the spoiler alert, but you're supposed to have read the story by now. And while there is this tragic ending, there are also elements of humor. And this is what we call black humor. It's when a writer presents tragic or kind of distressing situations in humorous terms. Okay, it's kind of ironic, and there is a lot of irony in here. In the short story, or in the notes that I've put together for this story, I talk a lot about genre because there's some really interesting things that to think about, and it's an opportunity for you to expand your understanding of genre. So I talk about Southern Gothic, and you probably are familiar with Gothic literature or Gothic films. But so Southern Gothic is similar to that, but with some unique pieces, and I have that all laid out in your notes. Also, I talk about the grotesque, which I just wanted to mention here. It's a really interesting sort of a structure in which writers will often create these grotesques, which are these characters that have, they're like human, but they also have some really disfiguring kind of elements. So we can see this. One of the examples that I give you in your notes is Gollum from Lord of the Rings. And I also talk about Frankenstein's creature, right? And these are these kind of disturbing characters. And while the characters in A Good Man is Hard to Find don't necessarily have the physiological disfigurements, they are very much characters who embody ugliness through their behaviors, their speech, their attitudes. Okay, so the grandmother can actually portray some real ugliness in the things she says, as can the two little ones. And of course the misfit. So that's kind of something in there. And the key thing in this story is that there is this central conflict. There's this clash of belief systems, and it kind of gets into what does it mean to be good? A good man is hard to find. What does it mean to be good? Who decides if someone is good? How do you formulate a definition for goodness, right? All of these things. And in part, the grandmother has adopted Christian theology, but not perfectly, because she's incredibly hypocritical. And even though she ascribes to be a woman of prayer and morality, she also very much contradicts herself. And then the misfit, he, on the other hand, probably understands Christian theology better than the grandmother does, but he has rejected that as a way to define goodness and justice and those kinds of things, because justice and punishment haven't made sense to him. Okay, so there's even some overlap with the ideas that were presented in Great Expectations, particularly in this story. Is about what does it mean to be good, and part of that is from the grandmother's perspective, from Red Sam's perspective, it means to be a gentleman, be a lady, which primarily have to do with outward appearances and attitudes and behaviors. But and then of course in Great Expectations, again, what does it mean to be a gentleman? The kind of interesting thing in this story compared to Great Expectations is that in Great Expectations, goodness is typically assigned to those who are of the lower classes, where in this story, kind of this self-righteous Southern Christian kind of an attitude is that goodness is assigned to those who are of an upper class or who have religious superiority. So there's this level of superiority in it. It's different in Dickens. It's about humility and about integrity. And in this story, goodness has more to do with a moral righteousness and moral right and those kinds of things. The next story, the Ken Mitchell story, is kind of a fun story. It's a fairly short story to read. And in the notes, I've given you some background on Saskatchewan during that period, because I know that a number of my students are not born or raised in Saskatchewan. And I thought it might help to inform your understanding of it a little bit and give you some historical background of Saskatchewan, just to, kind of fill you with some more knowledge. So I gave you some of that. But in this story, the central struggle is between the common working person and the corporation or the government. And this is something that we can see throughout history, throughout the world. There is a struggle between the working class or between the disadvantaged or just between the common person and systems of authority, whether it be a corporation, whether it be a government. This is how, labor unions started primarily, is that they were a reaction against oppressive corporations and unsafe, unfair employment practices. And so people rose up. This is kind of the essence of Marxism, if you are familiar with the Communist Manifesto. It's that, we need to get rid of these social class issues, like social class struggles. The way to do that is through revolution. It's that it has to be a revolution that is actually going to change government systems, okay? And there's, revolutions that you may have studied, like the French Revolution. And even in America today, with the success of Donald Trump, primarily people attribute that to the discontent of the working class, those people who've lost jobs or whose jobs have become kind of lousy pay. And some of that's due to trade, to globalization, all kinds of things. But whatever the reason is, the point is that people are unhappy with the institution. You hear the U.S. talking about the U.S. election, and in the media they talk about the establishment. The people are anti-establishment. They're going against the establishment, the elitism of D.C., of Washington, and people could make the same argument in Canada as well. And Justin Trudeau is a prime minister for the people, I would say, and that I think that in voting him in somewhat, it was because people wanted somebody to give them a voice, and he wants to give a voice to the common person. Now, this is not intended to be a political discussion or to tell you that, I like Justin Trudeau, whatever, it doesn't matter. But this story is dealing with that. Took place in the 1930s, and yet we can see that the struggle is real today, okay? So I think it's an interesting story for you to read. There are also elements of racism that I think are something that's always a problem and that we could look at and examine. So lots of notes on those. I probably got a bit carried away in my analysis of those stories and rating out everything for you, but they're very rich stories, especially the Flannery O'Connor one, and there was just so much to say, so I tried to give you as much information as possible to help you understand the story. And I hope that you do read through those notes and find it entertaining. And and if you have any questions while you're writing your short story essay analysis, please email me. And you can also take advantage of rating resources through the university. If you are not familiar with those, you can look on the UR Courses website or send me an email. All right, thank you all. Take care.